I've got a great guest on the show today. I've got Kevin Gibbons, who's the founder of Resignal. Hi, Kevin. How are you doing?
Yeah, hi Jim. Really good to join you, and yeah, looking forward to this chat.
We were talking in the green room. I said to Kevin, usually I see him at the UK Search Awards. We're both dressed up in tuxedos. We have a quick beer before the awards ceremony starts. We have a 3-minute conversation. Kevin then goes on to win a bundle of awards, and I never see him again because his whole team's celebrating the awards that they won. So I just thought it would be useful to have Kevin on as a guest on the podcast because he's got a really interesting backstory in terms of how he got into the industry. Kevin, how did you get into search?
Yeah, and certainly our journeys have overlapped at different stages, and we can talk about that kind of in more detail. But for me, the real moment would have been 2003. I worked at a web design agency in Oxfordshire, which is where I'm from. And I'm pretty sure I got that job because I mentioned in the interview that they sponsored Oxford United, so they're called Domino Systems. Pretty much everyone thought that the shirt sponsor of Oxford at that point in time was Domino's Pizzas, because you would. I was the only one that mentioned, oh, okay, I heard of you because of this. So I applied for a placement year. So I still at uni. So it's like the third year of my degree. And then I went back to uni afterwards. And I think they wanted to justify their sponsorship because no one had mentioned that thing before. So they hired me. And it wasn't for an SEO role. It was actually for a role in web development. I think I quickly realized web development was hard. I'm not sure I was that good at it. I think they quickly realized that as well. And
Oh, is it?
yeah, exactly. I wouldn't know my way around these days, put it that way. But it was a great learning curve to actually do web development. And that led into a number of different roles. And at that point in time, the agency started doing SEO for clients. I wasn't involved in that myself, but I could see it happening. And I was excited by that trend of, okay, this is where things may be going. I found it easier than web development. It was certainly a less mature market. It was brand new. It's like 2003. As everyone, you'll remember those days, I'm sure, but everyone was certainly making it up as they run along. And it was a great time to be involved and just, kind of understand what's happening and how to offer that as a service. And I started from there, really. I built affiliate websites on any subject you could think of, turned that into Google AdSense beer money when I went back to being a student, and was just really quite curious about how I could build my own websites, do SEO. I started blogging about it. I did the typical student thing, did a year out in Australia, and that once I got to Australia, I realized that on a holiday visa, you could only do a job for 3 months and then have to leave and go somewhere else, which wasn't that good for trying to get involved in a professional career. And so I actually freelanced my way around Australia for a year, and by building up affiliate websites and earning income off of that, writing a blog, and then generating inquiries off the back of blogging, I found that was just a good way to attract attention. And the other tip from that was I was quite often the first to notice things had changed. So I did quite a lot like Google Ads and things like that at the time. So I would just say, Google have changed X, Y, and Z today. And because I was 12 hours ahead, maybe even a bit more for the US, I was the first quite often to notice these changes. So I would get picked up by Barry Swartz quite often at Search Engine Roundtable, Search Engine Watch back then. And I'd get quite a lot of kind of the coverage as being an original source of this. That would have been like 2005, 2006. Off the back of that, that led to obviously good backlinks, but certainly like inquiries from people who were clicking through and seeing that I was an SEO consultant. And without even trying to be an SEO consultant, that's where I quickly ended up.
You were in Australia, you freelanced your way around Australia. Did they eventually catch up with you and say, right, you need to leave, or did you voluntarily cut back?
Yeah, it's always a year, and I loved it. And it's one I've never been back to Australia since, and I need to fix that because it's a great country. And I certainly think that for me, it was a good push. And I think I realized later in life when it's like you get more commitments, certainly financially in terms of what you're doing. For me, I could literally take a year off, use a small amount of savings, say I'm going to live on that and earn what I can, and that's my year. And if I come back home and I've got no money, I'll get a job. And that's the luxury of being, I think I was 23 at that point in time. So it was really nice to be able to do that. And my plan was always to come back and get a job. And the realization I had when I came back it was March 2006, I came back, was that I had a job. My SEO consultant, I think this is a bit of imposter syndrome, but I set up an agency website, probably more from that perspective of no one's going to hire me. I don't know what I'm doing, but let's pretend to be an agency. So I set up a domain name, seoptimize.com. I wanted to get SEO in the domain so that I could start ranking with keywords and all of that stuff. And yeah, by the time I got back, I realized that, okay, I could get a job, but I wasn't that keen on moving to London at that point in time. And there wasn't much available in Oxfordshire, certainly SEO wise. And there's an opportune moment where someone who was running a business locally had just left and exited that company and decided that they wanted to start their own search agency. And I was already doing this. So we had a few discussions and then decided, okay, let's launch that company together. And that's where SC Optimize really became an agency at that point in time. We then decided, okay, let's turn this into a limited company. And from there, we won more clients, employed people, and built it upwards.
Yeah, because I think the sort of the mid noughties, the sort of 2005 through to 8, 9 were probably some of the best years, I think, for searching the kind of the sphere of like what I know. I mean, like I think that was probably the peak period in terms of growth opportunities. Again,
absolutely, yeah.
I think so many people that I know that ran agencies back then, or maybe are still running agencies now, like, again, probably like yourself, they were consulting and thought, well, nobody's really going to want to hire a consultant. Whereas I think now a lot of the podcast guests I've had on have deliberately stayed as consultants, right, or advisors, rather than switching to kind of the agency model, right? I mean, I think, when you kind of look at it, I mean, I think a lot of people, there's this perception of you can't sort of hire consultants, you need to hire an agency, right? And I always maintain that people will hire an agency for one of two things. They're either hiring for expertise or they're hiring for utility, right? And I think a lot of people they think they're hiring for expertise, but really what they're looking to do is just outsource grunt work that they don't want to do themselves. And that's, for me, the complete wrong reason to kind of do that, right? I mean, ultimately, an agency should bring tons to the table. And equally, a consultant can bring the same sort of expertise to the table that an agency can. They're just doing it on the back of, an in-house team or something like that. So,
yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Those days, I remember walking around the internet world at Earl's Court just to understand a bit more about what's going on. And I think that would have been the days of Latitude with, say, Richard Gregory, John Myers, and Big Mouth Media, Andrew Girdwood. I remember very well, Neutralize, Teddy Cowell, and all of those people in that, what I consider to be
Dixon Jones,
almost like the first for Dixon. Yeah, absolutely. And that was great because I consider myself quite early in terms of the SEO journey, but I certainly wasn't the first wave. There were already very established companies at that point in time that were absolutely flying off in demand. And yeah, like I said, at that point in time, it's a good time to get involved. Certainly it's before the 2008 kind of recession and everything else that was happening, and it was still flying and growing at that point.
But yeah, even with the 2008 sort of, crash that kind of happened, I mean, even in that sort of scenario, there were still opportunities. I think, a lot of people see the damage, and I think a lot of people will see opportunity, right? I mean, I certainly got involved in some stuff, which, again, like I would never get involved in it now, but I got involved in doing things like payday loans and things like that because, people were in desperate need of short-term cash that they couldn't get because, they were having problems with paying mortgages and things like that. So, so there was definitely opportunity there that presented itself as a result of misfortune that people were experiencing, right? And again, I'm not saying I want to exploit people's misfortune, but the alternative was they'd have some guy turning up at their door in a leather jacket with a baseball bat to kneecap them, right? And it's sort of, I don't really want to sort of see that as a potential alternative, but I think, again, I just think that there's sort of been those opportunities if you kind of look for them. So you kind of,
there always is.
So you had sort of SE Optimize, you were in partnership with somebody. Again, I think my understanding is you kind of like the partnership ended up sort of splitting up. Is that right?
It is, and it's one of those that, to be honest, I think we did very well. I wouldn't see this as a negative story. It was more, we grew the agency from that, like I say, I think it was 2007 through to 2012. And yeah, we had a great journey. We went from trying to win small Oxfordshire local businesses to large Oxfordshire brands through to national brands. I'm not quite sure about global. Yeah, we probably did actually, but I certainly remember we did great work with Audley Travel based in Oxfordshire and Mila, and that went through to Deloitte, M&G Investments. So we had a really nice portfolio of clients, team of 15 or so people, and a very strong team, great reputation in terms of blogging, and those days kind of social media was probably a lot of Twitter kind of back then, but that generated great leads. I think we grew to, I think it's like 1.2 million. We were listed on Deloitte Fast 50. So I certainly look back at that time as that was, yeah, really exciting to be involved in. We probably plateaued for the last, I'd say, year to 18 months of facing those agency growth challenges that I think are quite typical, where you get to a point of we're winning new business, but now we're churning clients, and we're winning quite significantly sometimes in terms of new business, but it's replacing what we've lost. And that kind of led to a bit of a plateau, and that we needed to break through. And I think then I had
churning. Why were you churning clients?
I think it was, some of it was, we ended up, I think as an Oxfordshire agency, we focused quite a lot on digital marketing. So we did paid search, we did SEO, analytics, but social media. And certainly coming out the other side of that, the focus was much more on SEO and a specialism in doing one thing really well. And certainly once we started to break through the bigger clients, like all of those I just mentioned in terms of brands, I think we did paid search for a couple of them, but really we were known for SEO. And I think that was the big thing of, I don't think we were ever bad at any of those services. I think we were good at all of them, but we were never great. And I think actually just really focusing and doubling down on how do you be great at one thing. As a small agency, obviously, as you get a bit more scale, you can do more. But for us, it was, okay, let's really specialize and be known for SEO. And then we can attract the clients that we want to attract and grow together with them. Yeah. And also it's a level of maturity of being able to run a business. We now look at things like, obviously, the finances more closely, client services, project management. When you're running an agency and you don't have that level of experience, you just have to make mistakes. I certainly have. I don't know, that's the kind of topic of your podcast, but I feel like I'm always a good case study on how to make every mistake you can, but still come out the other side and
I know
learn from it.
people that are brilliant, absolutely brilliant at paid search or brilliant at SEO, but are really crap at running a business, right? And I mean, we're gonna talk, right? We're gonna talk about Blueglass, which is probably where you and I kind of have our closest alliance in terms of like stuff that we've done together in the past, and we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I mean, I'm just amazed at how many people think that they can kind of do everything, right? So they go, I'm going to do SEO, I'm going to do PPC, I'm going to do analytics. Yeah. Just they're trying to use the same people to do all of these things rather than understanding and accepting that there is a significant difference in terms of skill set required to do SEO than there is to do PPC, for argument's sake, right? And so many people go, you're going to do both, and I just think sometimes it's almost like like in a football soccer analogy, saying, you're going to be a goalkeeper and a striker, right? And it's a completely different skill set to be both, right? You can't really do the two things together. They just don't work that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's right. And yeah, I think, like you say, it's how do you apply that? And equally from a positioning perspective, I think we actually did very well in SEO Optimize of hiring very bright maths grads, physics grads from Oxford University that were absolute geniuses at paid search. I think when we started to make it work, it was, okay, let's hire people specifically for those roles and become more specialists. So yeah, that was definitely a big learning curve for us. And it's not the skill set I think that you certainly needed back then to be an SEO was very different to the behaviors and the mindset that you would have for looking at paid search. And yeah, I think we started to realize there's a big difference between the types of people we should be hiring for the different channels. And yeah, let's start to break it out.
It's all a bit foggy for me, really, but you moved from Oxford and you had an office in Paddington, and that's where you and I worked together for a little while. You had a small team there in an office that was above the British Rail headquarters, effectively.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So what happened was, in the latter days of SE Optimize, we set up what we probably called a satellite office at that point in time. We were going into London once or twice a week to meet with clients that were starting to be based in London. So we decided, okay, let's set up a small office and let's hire a couple of people there. So I think we had 3 or 4 people and set up that office. It's actually LinkDex's old office. So we were a partner of LinkDex at that point in time. And they were moving out and they had the cheapest rent in London and not the nicest office in London, but they were giving it.
I mean, the rent was cheap, and I think it was because at the time, weren't they building like the Elizabeth line outside or something? So literally every day was like aisle drive thing.
I can still hear that. I'm pretty sure I can hear 10 years later. And yeah, no, it was like noise cancelling headphones of trying to block out the Elizabeth line building out the window. So yeah, I think at that point, if we wanted to be in London, we had to do it on the cheap. And the train line of Oxford or got into Paddington was convenient for making that our home. And we were there for a few years actually. And like I said, I think that office served us well. And we did outgrow it, which is certainly a good thing. But yeah, I think just at that point in time, there was then a split between, kind of me moving away from SE Optimize. So for various different reasons, some business, a lot of it was personal, to be honest. It was like I went through a stage of my life where my dad had sadly died from cancer. So this would have been in April 2012. In hindsight, I should have taken time off and just gone through essentially a grieving process. But for me, my way of dealing with things was to throw myself into work. And I decided I wasn't happy with what I was doing. And again, in hindsight, there's an obvious reason why I wasn't, and it wasn't particularly to do with work, but it's easy to say in hindsight. And I think for me, I then decided, okay, I'm going to go in a different direction. And I negotiated a deal with Stuart, who's the business partner at SE Optimize. And we took the agency and I took the London office. I took the people in London. So I think it was 3 or 4 of us at that point in time and some clients, and started again and set up a new brand. And quite a messy period. We had a brand name called Quaturo, which I literally found on a website. I think it's called like Brand Bucket or something. They sell you a name and a logo because I had no idea what I was doing. So it's okay, that would do.
I was racking my brains trying to think, what was that like weird company name? I couldn't remember what it was, and you've just got it. Quaturo, I remember it.
It was terrible. I think I've scrubbed it from my LinkedIn now because it was terrible and it didn't last very long. But it was.
I honestly, Kevin, you need to wear all these scars. They're all part of your DNA. I don't think you should try and bear anything that kind of like it is all part of it's what's made you the person that you are today, right? And I think in some ways, if you haven't gone through these challenging situations, right, and made bad decisions, then you'll never end up kind of doing what you're doing now, right? I think sometimes, people think is you always see people posting on social media and stuff, and everything is about how fantastic it is. I mean, I keep watching all these YouTube videos because, clearly YouTube is part of my growth strategy for the podcast, right? And I keep reading all these, watching these videos, and everything that people are saying, I made $500,000 yesterday, and I'm thinking, that is complete and utter bullshit. There's no way on this planet, right? These 19-year-old kids are making $500,000, right? When they're saying what they're doing, I'm like, the reality of it, never in a million years is going to happen, right? But they're kind of claiming it, and people are buying into it. And I think maybe it's just because I'm an old codger, right, that I'm kind of more questioning the kind of validity of what's actually being said, right? But I think
it's there.
So much of like my DNA, right, and what I'm doing now with the podcast and trying to help promote the kind of the evolution of the industry, because even though I've been doing it for 25 years, I still think we're in the infancy, right? And I just think that, there's got to be a kind of like a roadmap for the way forward. And I'm trying to help steer people away from the kind of path that will lead them to, to a really kind of dark place. I think that, there's so many places where people think, I can become an influencer. I can do this, I can do that, right? And the reality of it is that so few people are doing it. So few people are actually making the sort of money that they're claiming to make, right? Because when, like I said, when you blow holes in the business model, you just go, there is no business model. You see people that have got a million subscribers on YouTube, and they're going, oh, I can't cope with it. The mental health is killing me, right? And you're thinking, well, if you had a million subscribers and what have you, they've got to be making $300,000-$400,000 a year. Why are they so miserable if they're making that kind of money? It just doesn't make any sense. But the problem is that they're a little bit caught in the hamster wheel, right? They've got to continually produce content in order to sustain the desire of the audience that they've built up, right? So they've kind of gone into it thinking all this money. Reality of it is that they can't sustain what they've got for the length of time that it's going to need to be sustained for, right? So
no, I think that's very true. And that there's definitely something in terms of credibility, of just the openness and transparency of this didn't work and this was the learning. And again, if there's a success out of that, great, but it's a balanced mix of success and failure. It's never just, I'm a genius. And like I say, your podcast is bad decisions. I'm sure a lot of people are like this. Every decision I've made at a point in time is genius. In hindsight, there's quite a lot of them. You're an idiot. But again, I think it's that transparency of being able to reflect on it. It's like I say, every decision I make, I've made it for a reason. I backed myself in order to do that, and it doesn't mean it is correct in hindsight. But again, I think you need to show, a bit of humility in terms of, okay, what am I going to take from that? What am I going to learn from that? Rather than covering, papering over the cracks and just saying it's amazing, because it very rarely is.
But running a proper agency, a proper business, and growing sensibly the way that you have with the current business that you've got, again, all the awards, and we'll talk about those a little bit later on, but all the awards that you've won, it must make you feel like you've done well to go from where you were probably at that particular point in time, a fairly dark place, to where you are now. But as you say, with hindsight, you kind of made some bad decisions, right? We can all say that. Yeah, that's a horrible decision. But it's only with hindsight that you realize just how bad a decision it was, right? So,
absolutely.
And things like the office in Paddington. I mean, I used to kind of get on the train, come to the office in Paddington, kind of arrive there. You clearly didn't have any meeting rooms, so we'd always kind of go off, try and find a coffee shop to go and meet people. I remember you had like this sort of two separate rooms. Like, you go off and be creative, right? You'd sort of like take yourself into the other room, be creative, write blog posts. I think at the time you had a dating site, right? So you were kind of the SEO for that, right? But again, for me, it was a sort of a fun environment to be in. You had, again, some really super enthusiastic people that kind of worked with you at that particular point in time. I think in the industry, they've kind of gone on to do really well. You had me.
Yeah, what they're achieving.
I kind of like threw myself on my sword to allow you to kind of bring in Russell, McCarthy, but it, again, I think there's a lot of people have been through the sort of the Kevin Gibbons kind of like school of learning how to run a business. Again, for me, I've always been so amazed at your ability to kind of be very unassuming, but very good at what you do. I think a lot of people just look at you and think you're laid back, but clearly nobody's fool.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's it. It's, how do you learn from that and appreciate that? And certainly for me, it's very much, I want everyone on my side in terms of how we're working, and then how do we, like you say, those days, and even today, it's let's get good people together and let's work hard, but enjoy it while you're doing it.
So Quaturo morphed into what?
Yeah, so that became Blueglass, and I'd been going to US conferences since, I think it was 2010 or something like that. So it was like the conferences you'll be familiar with, the SMX Advance, the PubCons. And I actually remember going to a PubCon, and I always did a blog post afterwards about the top things that I've learned, and I'd go back and I'd do a lunch and learn for our team. And we had a couple of people that came along with me to those events as well, but we'd share what I thought were the learnings. So I remember I came back from PubCon, and it was like the best talks I saw from this conference would have been from Greg Bozer, Chris Winfield, Lauren Baker, and someone else at the time. But probably Dave Snyder. And it's like, where's common theme here? They all work for Blueglass. What's going on there? And this seems exciting. It seems, I think, it had a brand beyond certainly the size of the company. It was very well thought of within the industry. And then Blueglass started their own conference. So I went out to LA.
That was Blueglass. Was it called Blueglass X?
It was. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I went out there, and that would have been around the same sort of time, like early 2012. And I got to know them, got to know Richard Zwicky, who was the CEO, and that led to conversations around, we're looking to grow for acquisition. We're looking to enter Europe. Would you be interested in a conversation around actually leading a UK part of the agency? And I know people I've spoken to, similar conversations. And I think probably more through my business naivety, if you like, at that point in time. I might have been involved in a business for the 6 years prior, but I was very much the kind of person who was looking after clients, our own marketing of the agency, not necessarily running the business at that point. And I went into those conversations optimistically, as I feel like I quite often normally am. That's my natural way of looking at things. And they had a plan that I think, again, it's a lot of people have said in hindsight, this is either going to be a massive success or a massive failure. They won't settle for anything else in between. And I think that's right. And it was a massive failure.
Because my understanding was it was kind of like a franchise model, wasn't it? Sort of like effectively you'd become Blueglass in the UK, and you had the guys that were going to be sort of Blueglass in sort of Switzerland and Germany and whatnot. But it was sort of like a franchise model where you could use the brand and have access to some of the social media profiles and equity kind of in that respect. But, effectively you were, if you like, contributing to kind of like buy the franchise for the UK.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think if you look at the model, I think there's a lot of it that's actually very good. But in terms of the finances, the operations, and the infrastructure behind it, it wasn't at the level it needed to be for the level of ambition that they had. And it was essentially a franchise, which in the end actually saved us, because it meant that the company was returned to myself as a shareholder, and we then were allowed to go back to being independent again, as opposed to a full acquisition of the company where in any US liquidation situation, they might have ended up having us tag along with it. So that wasn't actually the case. So that saved us. We still, as I had a difficult year, explaining to clients and prospects that we're no longer part of this operation. We're not going to go bust. You can trust us in terms of being a company. I can't remember the brand it was now, but I remember there was a pitch that we'd verbally won, and we then lost it almost overnight just because the US company had collapsed. Yeah. And there was a whole messy time in the period in between where the US company was publicly still operating, and individually no one was at the wheel. And that's when obviously we had conversations about, okay, if they don't want to run it, maybe we should. And that didn't go very far.
I remember my previous CFO at my original agency, Web Diversity. He'd helped me take me to kind of a trade sale. He'd sort of ex sort of Barclays Bank, right? Was heavily involved with some serious investors based in Monaco, right? They were quite happily prepared to put up some money to enable us to buy the business outright from Blueglass. In some respects, it's like it was horrible at the time, but so interesting to go through that experience of trying to understand the mechanics behind it. The thing that I was most concerned about is there was a top-heavy management infrastructure where everyone was getting paid a ton of money, everyone flew first class, everyone stayed in sort of swanky hotels. So there was a lot of expenditure in the business that was easy to carve out and say, well, we don't need that. We can manage on a much smaller management team, right? And all of the people that were doing the sort of, if you like, the work on a daily basis were really, really good and really smart, right? And I think the thing that bothered me the most was at the point in time that it all collapsed, all the people who had, done such great content, all that content just vanished almost overnight, right? I mean, they kind of de-indexed everything that was, ultimately, that was the people that worked at Blueglass. That was their sort of billboard for how successful they are at writing content. And that was taken away. I mean, you can kind of maybe go back and look at it on the Wayback Machine, right? But all that content just vanished. As much as they said it was a ton of money that needed, it really wasn't a ton of money. It was just a little bit of money to pay, this quirky sort of 3 sort of salaries in a month, thing and maybe
That's right. It was, yeah.
rent with the landlord, right? So it wasn't a ton of money that was needed. This consortium in Monaco were quite happy to pony up a good couple of $1 million to enable take over the day-to-day running. We just wanted to have access to the books to be able to see what it was that was involved. And we were like, nope, can't have them. They were like, okay, fine. Let's just park it. Let's move on, right? So as you say, you were able to reverse back into Quaturo. And I guess at that point in time, you then,
Well,
or did you not, did you go back into Quaturo or did you it's Blueglass?
we actually didn't. Yeah, and like I say, it's like you just triggered a thought, but there's a mutual friend of ours who was involved in like very late in the journey of a Blueglass bit. He described this as being, you just bought a Ferrari and you've run out of petrol and you can't afford the petrol, so you just leave the Ferrari at the forecourt. And that is how it felt with Blueglass. There's a lot underneath this as a great business, like you say, the people in particular in terms of what was happening, the brand that they'd established. And yeah, it was a shame to see it go. And what we'd then decided was, okay, day one, it's almost like that Planting office was like war room style. How do we communicate this to our clients and our team to reassure them that all of this, which was at times that quite, I'm trying to think of the right word, but quite aggressive online in terms of some of the messaging that was going out. Toxic, yeah, it's probably the right word for it. And we had to field a lot of questions. And in the end, my decision on this was, okay, I've left SEO Optimize in what was that kind of summer of 2012. I'd then rebranded to Quaturo. We then very quickly, 3 to 6 months, become Blueglass. So we'd have 3 different brands under my name within the space of 12 months. And I didn't want to backtrack. And I never really liked Quaturo as a name in the first place. And there is some equity as Blueglass. So let's keep that going. At the back of my mind was like, we can't keep doing this forever. And I remember, so I went on I'm trying to think what year this was, but I went on a leading professional services company training course, so 1 week at Harvard Business School. And this was, for me, almost like a growing up period of, okay, I'm not an SEO running a business. I'm now a business person who's running an SEO agency, and kind of like that switch in terms of my focus and mindset, really. And in that group, they set you up with, you're on we called it award then. If it's not, yeah, what do you call it? Halls, essentially. It's almost like student style of different people that I think there's 5 or 6 in this group. Cohort, I think is the word I'm looking for.
Right.
And it was a lawyer, a very successful lawyer, a partner at one of the leading consulting, I think a tax accountant. Again, like very senior people who had very strong established careers. And you got, I think it was like 20 minutes to explain a problem to them and 20 minutes for them to discuss and give you solutions. And I went to them and I said, okay, this is the problem. This is our brand situation. And we now have a situation where Blueglass US had done the same deal with us, with another company in Zurich. And we partnered together publicly. We were Blueglass UK, Blueglass Zurich. And again, from the outside, it looked good. From the inside, I owned 100% of the UK company. Raphael owns the Zurich company. We'd get on perfectly well. We'd do ski trips together, etc. But the brand was shared. And it's actually, if you want to continue down this route to a point that you're building your own brand equity. And
Evan, can I just stop you 1 minute? I need to go for a pee in 1 minute.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, don't worry.
It's the one problem of getting old. You have to go for a pee. I'll be back.
I might do the same while you do that.
So you have this to look forward to when you get older, Kevin.
Yeah. I was going to say it's better than the background noise if you're like peeing into a bottle or something.
I was going to say maybe I should just try and see if I can get myself a catheter or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. Yeah. So the point was I did this Harvard course and I used this opportunity to pick people's brains and just say, okay, this is the company brand. These are the 2 company structures. And it's a unanimous kind of wake up call for me where everyone met. They was like, you're mad. You don't own your brand. You have no brand equity that you're building. You need to move away from this as soon as you can, really. And that was the turning point. And I don't think we did rebrand for maybe 6 to 12 months after that, but it was like, okay, actually, they're right. If we ever want to kind of get acquired, or Zurich wants to get acquired, which they since have, this is going to get really messy. So we're better off actually having brand equity. And that was the point where we decided, okay, let's reposition, or not reposition, but rebrand ourselves. And that's where Resignal came in. And yeah, like I say, there was certainly a period of keeping the Blueglass brand more for stability of clients and our team, but we knew we had to wave goodbye to that at some point. So there were certain things about that Blueglass brand that was very positive and strong that I'm sure we certainly wanted to get benefit from, but then there's also parts of that, as you said, it's like very toxic, and people would reach out to us and almost be quite angry about Blueglass in the sense of that actually wasn't us, and that it's something that we wanted to then start to distance ourselves away from.
Yeah, it's funny. I've still got kicking around somewhere like a Google Drive folder that's absolutely chock-a-block full of all the old process documents, presentations from, as you say, like some of the probably the smartest SEO people. They've all gone on to do great things. You know, the kind of Chris Whitt and Greg Boses and so on. They've gone on to do great things sort of subsequent to the Blueglass closure, right? But I think some of that, the content that was produced back then, I look at it now and I tell you what, that stuff still stands true to this day. I mean, it's still really well put together, really well structured. You know, proposals were good, the decks were good, you know, the processes were good. Everything about the bit great. Everyone, you mentioned at the beginning there, it was so many great minds all in one place, and they all threw their hat into the ring, right? I think everyone that the point in time when Blueglass was born, right, everyone was like, there's no way there's going to be that many egos in a room that's going to survive, right? The way
it
came out, right?
As you say, it's like individually, every one of them, they're brilliant. Collectively, it's like a team of Cristiano Ronaldos, and you need a Roy Keane, or like you need someone in there that's going to be able to say, okay, how do we organize this? And I think certainly my big learning is it's not just about hiring great people and letting them get on with it. There's part of that, but you need the right structure and the right mixed and blend. And I think the financial control was the big one in terms of actually
and just
how do you harness this
leadership. I mean, I think, you know, I think unfortunately the kind of everyone was able to kind of go and do whatever they wanted, right? Where that sort of control element that needs to be in place operationally, financially, you know, to enable things to kind of move forward. I used to amaze me when people would talk about, you know, oh, we're going to go in and do a client meeting, and there'd be like 2 people on the client side and 12 to 14 people on the Blueglass side. You're thinking, if you added up the kind of hourly rate of pay for each one of those individuals, right, there's a huge amount of money sitting on the phone or sitting in a Zoom call, right, to kind of have their 2 minutes of input into kind of what's going on, right? And I think, you know, when you're running a business, you need to kind of, I'm not saying you necessarily need to micromanage it at that level, but you need to be cognizant of the fact that every single person, regardless of whether they're client facing or not, is a cost to the business. And you've got to make sure that you're accountable for, you know, that money is accountable, right? That people are doing things that are efficiency as well as effective, right? It's got to be effective, but it needs to be efficient in the business as well. So.
Absolutely. There's a book I read just last week, actually, and they used an analogy of if you want to drive a race car, as a good example. The race car, for a very good reason, has 2 pedals. It has an accelerator and a brake. And sometimes people forget about the brake, but you're never going to win if all you do is just go for the accelerator on every corner. And football teams, similar analogy. You need a goalkeeper, you need a defense, and the business is the same. You need financial control and a bit of pessimism sometimes, which doesn't come naturally to me either. But in order to look at, okay, actually, how do we control this? And it's not just, let's go for it, let's go for it, let's go for it.
Yes.
There's a lot of really good stuff there.
They use proper football.
That balance.
But proper football strategies, you know, Erling Haaland is brilliant for Man City. Mo Salah is brilliant for Liverpool. But in Egypt and, you know, Norway, not so much, right? So, you know, because they have infrastructure in place in terms of the team that's supporting them to do their job, right? So everyone in America at the podcast, these 2 guys talking about it. No idea. Okay, so you obviously rebranded from Blueglass to Resignal. I remember coming to the kind of launch party that you threw.
Oh yeah, Cross.
Was that Paddington again? I think
No, it was
Cross or
King's Cross, the German gymnasium.
Yeah, great venue. And I remember you kind of giving out
It was.
everyone that kind of went there, you had that sort of bright canary yellow kind of notebook that everyone had. I've still got it in the drawer somewhere, right? I still use it from time to time.
Yeah.
How prolific I am as a note taker, I'm still using the book. I should have been on like 50th book by now, but I'm just not a person.
Sure, as well about it. Yeah. But yeah, that was something where we brought in a brand consultant at that point in time. From my couture days, I decided, okay, this isn't going to work. This isn't how my brain works. And let's bring in someone experienced and kind of let's look at what that identity looks like and how do we shape that into who we are and what we do.
I think one of the things I've always liked about the way in which you conducted things is you accept your limitations, you understand what you're good at, what you're not good at. And the things you're not good at, you've brought people in to help support that. And things like the brand expertise. A lot of people might try and wing. I've always winged it in the past and made a big mistake. When I sold I just made a complete pig's ear of it, right? So, it ultimately ended up costing me something like £80,000 in, fees for finances because I was selling my business to a publicly traded American company and I needed to have all my books redone into something that was going to be generally accepted accounting principles with my accountant, right? Only to have to do it again with a kind of US based account. Right? So just to be those,
Yeah.
Somebody could have, if I'd have had advisors in at the beginning, they could have advised me on what to do, right? I always thought due diligence was them doing due diligence on my business when really it's a two-way thing, right? It's also you doing due diligence on their business, right? And had I done that in a better way, I may never have sold the business to the people I ended up selling it to. I had lots of other options at that time, but I just chose what seemed to be the best option at the time, but with hindsight turned out to be the worst option. But, we all live and learn. So
Absolutely.
obviously with Resignal, again, that's been sort of going for a little while. You've kind of evolved and changed. Again, I've always kind of said like you are a SEO agency, e-commerce SEO agency. What is an e-commerce SEO agency?
But I think for us, it's understanding who we do our best work for. And we kind of traditionally had been very much B2C anyway. So I think certainly since that kind of like early Blueglass days of 2012, it was very much travel, retail, finance were our big sectors. And what we focus on, we had great brands. So Expedia was certainly a strong brand for us in travel, World Remit in finance. And what we found is coming through COVID, the retail side have really ramped up. And the travel side, obviously, for obvious reasons, about planes being in the sky, etc., had faded away. And at that point in time, we then said, okay, we've got really strong case studies in retail. We've got our pitch win rate is stronger in retail because that's actually where we've got a great track record, case studies, proof that we can do work for people like them. And financial services was a small percentage of the business. I don't think we're 100% e-commerce today. I think there's a couple of clients that might be outside of that, but we very much said, okay, in terms of where we think we should be placing our bets, e-commerce is the right fit for us. And let's actually get to understand people from an e-commerce background. Let's understand the buying cycles, everything that goes into this. And again, e-commerce is probably quite broad, but then starting to look at how do we use that track record. So Essex is a great example. They've been a client for coming up to 7 years now, which is certainly a long established relationship for any agency. And that's something that, again, we treat incredibly importantly. And we see this as every kind of new year as a new challenge of let's make sure that we're impressing and achieving great results. But off the back of that comes great case studies, award entries, and the type of stories that then lead into okay, more people want to work with us. So our marketing became very much, let's focus on our clients, and that will attract more clients that we want to see. And e-commerce just flows naturally out of that, really, because it's people want to buy that trust, that track record in that sector.
So again, I as you know, I'm usually a kind of a judge at the various awards that you guys enter. And I've always kind of been, I'd much rather be on the sort of giving out side of things than on the receiving end of things, right? In like, I've managed to make the PPC top 100 this year. And I always kind of said, if I ever appeared on one of those lists, I'd be like, God, I'm kind of doing something wrong. I don't want to be on the list. I'm just very uncomfortable with it being about me. I'd much rather it being about other people. Right. So for me, again, I've always been curious. Like, so once you're an award-winning agency, like, why do you need to submit any more awards? Because I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. You have won more awards for Resignal than any other company in the world. I think you published a LinkedIn post where you've listed a top table of how many awards you've won. You've won more, I think, than any other company.
Yeah, and I think the answer to why do we keep going is we want to produce award-winning work. And for me, it's not the award is a byproduct of that. The way that we've retained ASICS for 7 years is by saying, okay, we've got a KPI from the pitch year one, and this is to drive organic revenue growth. We've then got year two, let's keep challenging ourselves. And if we can achieve that, then we've got a very strong award entry at the end of it. But it comes from the desire to produce high quality work for our clients and to delight our clients. If we're doing that, then like I say, there's a story to tell. And that's become a large focus of our marketing is actually, let's do what we're here for. Let's delight our clients. Let's achieve results. And then if we can celebrate success together, that's fantastic. That leads into, like I say, case studies, awards, referrals, just general word of mouth and reputation. And personally, I think that's the best way to do marketing because it's focused on your product. We actually went for a period of, we culled a lot of our marketing budget, and it's stuff like sponsored events was something that I think we decided to take down. And what we said in the end was there's lots of things that we could do that gets in front of the right target audience. But actually what really cuts through and what matters is them seeing that we've done great work for other people. And yeah, like I said, getting those recommendations and referrals off the back of doing good work. So yeah, it's been always like a challenge for our team internally. It's great for them, for their own kind of CVs, if you like, in terms of saying, I've been involved in this piece of work, and it's something that, again, they have immense pride in doing. And it's also very nice for clients as well to celebrate that success. So yeah, it's certainly, for us, it's not so much the result at the end of it. It's not the number of awards that we've won. That's our biggest way of retaining clients is to produce work against what we set out to do. So yeah, it just keeps challenging us year on year.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I always find, like, for me, there's nothing more satisfying being a judge at any of the awards that I've done the judging for, to see the genuine kind of delight when people win. And obviously, if somebody's won, it means other companies have not won. Other entrants were not deemed to be kind of win. But I've always maintained that, if you've submitted good work, and you get beaten by somebody else, you should still celebrate the fact that you made a shortlist, because making a shortlist is in and of itself is a major achievement. The standard is pretty high, and all the judges are not foolish enough to give them out just for the sake of giving them out because it's a brand they recognize, anything like that. The work's got to be good, and it's got to be quantifiable, and and I just think, for me, like I said, it's testimony to how well Resignal have done in being able to submit an award-winning entry, right? But do it so frequently for so long. Again, I think it's just testimony to kind of how well in which you kind of manage the relationships with the clients that you've got and produce the work that you do.
Yeah, and I think some of it is actually, some of our best work has come in the planning stages of working with clients. So we've done this in pitching before, where we said, this is what we will achieve within 12 months. So pretend you're 12 months into the future, and this is what we've produced for you. And that might include, we've won an award, you're still on stage collecting this, but then you work backwards in terms of, okay, how do you make it happen? Just wanting to achieve a result and get an award at the end of it, anywhere near enough, you've got to turn that into a plan. But then by visualizing that success, then you can say, okay, this is how we're going to make it happen. These are some challenges that we might need to overcome. We'll take a pre-mortem. And then looking at how you've essentially built that strategy, which is what you should be doing anyway with your clients. But for us, it's quite a nice exercise to say that award entry, and I think this is where sometimes it can go wrong. Right? UK Search Awards is next week. Submission deadline was 2 months ago. I think where it can go wrong is people say in September, okay, what have we done this year that's award winning? And the problem with that approach is actually you thought about it too late, and you might be able to polish something into an entry. What you should really be doing is when you start working with that client, think about day one, how do we turn this into an award entry? What is it that we're doing? And then actually build it continually through that process. So it's okay. But now I think we're off track. This isn't, and again, it's not about the award, it's about the KPI and retaining and growing with that client. But if you have that approach, the material is there for you. And it's as much as there's an art in being able to write an award entry in a way that appeals to a judge, and they might pre-score it quite highly, etc. If you haven't done the work and you haven't got a result, then it doesn't matter how good you are at writing an award entry. So it's got to be a cultural thing in terms of how you approach working with your clients to the point that you deserve that award based on the work that you've done and the results that it's achieved.
For anyone that is thinking of submitting entries, just listen to that bit over and over again to get the same points that Kevin's just raised there. It's not about the words, it's about the work that goes into producing the words. The words is just the manifestation of the work that you've done and breaking it down into the various components that make up an actual entry. If you don't do
100%.
it matter, right? So talk to me a little bit about your conference, because you had your first one, was it this year or was it, I can't remember if you had.
It was last year. So we've done two now. We've done them both in March, and what we wanted to do was to have a real focus on e-commerce SEO. And that was something that we felt there's some very good conferences in terms of SEO, and there's some very good e-commerce conferences, but bringing the two together, we felt that there was a bit of a gap in the market in terms of that audience, and bringing a mix of people as speakers and attendees from an SEO crowd and an e-commerce crowd together. And obviously there's overlap. Some people are e-commerce SEOs, and it's very much then looking at how we can have a conversation around those topics. We took an approach where we would bring in a keynote speaker that was very well known to set the tone of the day. So last year we had Rory Sutherland, who was fantastic, and it was a great way to open up and again have a broader opinion on just kind of that consumer psychology and looking at different buying behaviors, and again in a very comical, entertaining way. And then a series of speakers. He's fantastic. And then this year we had Holly Tucker, who was the founder of Not on High Street, and again she was excellent in terms of incredible story, incredible background, building a company that you would probably take for granted in today's day and age, Shopify, CMS platforms, and everything else. So she was trying to almost create the behind the scenes model at the same time as building a brand and everything else when that technology didn't really exist, and did incredibly well out of building that up. And again, against fierce competition, if you think of like eBay and Amazon at that period of time, of just really differentiating, and again, incredible stories alongside very seasoned SEOs and just people who been there, done it, and not just what's happened, but predicting the future, because we know so much is changing right now that it's how you can look ahead as well. So yeah, we've definitely enjoyed running those events, where we've committed to, we'll do this again next year. We're moving it to May rather than March. And yeah, it's something that again, we're excited to bring people together for.
But I guess in some respects, like the conference is really, as you say, it's an opportunity to kind of bring everyone in one place and learn from people that are doing things in the trenches. But again, I guess it would be nice if you make a ton of money from it, but I think as much as anything, it's filling in almost like a bit of like a Blueglass X type event where you bring the very best people in a particular discipline into one place to.
It does, and to be honest, we lose money. We've lost money from both events, but for the reason that there's other benefits to that. It's like you say, I feel like there's certain things we've done where we want to be able to give back and help people. We've had charities we've donated tickets to, for example. We think it's very good for our team in terms of education and also giving them a platform for speaking opportunities themselves.
Yeah,
and obviously it's a marketing event for us to pull together people who are potential clients, referrers, etc. in future as well. So it's very much a long game for us, but it's certainly not a business in its own right, if you'd like, from an events perspective.
It's funny. I always remember, I cast my mind back to when we were in the office in Paddington, and Hacker, who used to work for you back then, got the opportunity to speak at Brighton SEO. He had like one of the, like a 7-minute new speaker slot. he must have done about 70 hours worth of prep for his 7 year.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Yeah.
But but again, I think for me, it's a great platform having a conference like a Brighton SEO to Blood, brand new speakers for the first time, people that want to have the impact of being able to say on their CV that they're conference speaker and everything else. But
Definitely. Yeah.
I know you've done speaking at conferences in the past, but do you do much of that now, or is that sort of something that you tend to kind of shy away from?
I've actually done one, maybe two this year, but they're more the agency leadership events now. I think I've now realized I'm not hands-on doing the SEO anymore. So actually, there's people in our team who are much better at that than me, and they are speaking at events. So we've had people speak at Brighton SEO this year. We've had people again speak at our own conference and other events as well. So it's something that we certainly encourage as an agency. But yeah, I've focused a bit more on the agency side as opposed to the SEO conferencing.
One of the things I really admire about what you do is that you invest in the people that work in your team and sponsor them going away to conferences to be able to learn from their peer group. It's expensive. It's expensive to take people out of the office, take them away to like a conference overseas. I mean, I know you've taken members of your team to PubCon in the past, and you
Yeah.
get flights, the hotels, all the, the per diems, the kind of drinks in the bar, the food, all that sort of stuff, time away from the office, right? But I think from the point of view of investing in the people that work with you, it's a massive thing that I think all agency owners should be doing. They should be kind of carving out
Oh, okay.
money, right, towards the development of the team that they have, right? Because, the better the people have been developed from a personal perspective, the better they're going to feel about working with you, the more likely it is they're going to be committed. And I think you'll kind of reap the rewards in terms of the work they do for clients moving forward.
I've definitely got a lot of value myself in terms of that investment and the development that's come off the back of it. And I certainly encourage it with our team as much as we possibly can, to the point that I'd argue not investing is more costly than actually investing, because you've got to be like we know we're in a fast-paced industry. You've got to be able to keep pace. And there's also the marketing side of your brand, your reputation, and just building more of a presence of showcasing your work and your thought leadership that has benefits as well.
And I think more and more agencies now are decentralized, so that a lot of people kind of don't go into the office every day. They may not even be an office. I know a lot of agencies don't even have offices now, right? So,
Yeah, we don't. Yeah.
So, although you have a physical address, that's probably just more for tax purposes than anything else, right? But it's sort of, I think, you need to have the ability to be able to bring people together in one place, right? So again, whether it's a Brighton SEO, take all your team down to Brighton so you can have team dinners, client dinners, whatever you want to do, right? But it gives the opportunity for everyone to kind of meet in one place, with the backdrop of a particular conference that you have. And if you've got your own conference, then that's a perfect opportunity to kind of get your team together, to support the conference, but also to kind of meet each other and spend time together.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a decision we made when we went remote for obvious reasons in 2020. But then it was, okay, now we've hired a distributed team. It's not so much a rent saving, it's actually the better use of that budget. So investing in the team's training, running a conference, for example, in terms of the marketing side and the events, and equally being able to visit our clients and go to them. So we've got some clients that are based in Europe, for example, and again, it's all get on a plane and go and see them rather than having an office where, to be honest, in a lot of cases, they prefer us to go to them anyway. So yeah, I think it's just an evolution of let's do what works for our clients and works for our team.
Yeah, I mean, I've made a point of trying to ensure that, even though most of my clients are based in North America, I make a point of getting on a plane and flying out to the States and visiting them on site.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, you have the people that sort of ultimately sign the checks, but you also have the relationships that you build up with the people that work in the office. You can kind of go out and have lunches,
100%.
meet the families and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So, I think so much of that is an investment in, the kind of the growth of the agency as
It is. I remember you telling me a story ages ago, actually, about how you lost a pitch in the US, and it was because I don't think you got on a plane and attended. And I think you were saying at that point in time, it was a turning point of the relative. If you're going to go for this pitch and it's a decent size, just go all in and make the effort, be there, And
Yeah, I lost
again, just
SEO Moz, right? Because Rand got on a plane. I mean,
yeah,
Rand was an awful lot closer than I was, but but even still, he made the client feel special, right? In order to win the business, right? And on that basis, I'm like, I'm never going to have that happen to me again. I've always kind of made a point. If I'm going to pitch for something, I'm all in on the pitch to kind of ensure that we try and win the business, right? So
yeah, I think that's right. I think you have to.
So Kevin, you also, in addition to obviously the Recommerce SEO conference, you do your kind of, you organize a bunch of breakfasts as well. Right? I've had the opportunity to attend. I think I won them a while back. So what's the rationale behind those?
It's similar to, basically, this is our marketing plan in a lot of ways. Is we'll run one big event a year, so Recommerce, but we don't just want that to be, let's get everyone together and then we don't see them for 12 months. So actually, what we've decided to do is let's run a number of events, and you might have themes and topics behind them, but how do we then get people together for conversations? And what we found is, I've always thought from conferences, you'll see some good presentations, but the real value comes in the bar afterwards. So is the conversations that happen around bringing those groups of people together are quite more valuable than actually sitting and watching the presentation. Okay, I'm not saying there's not value behind the presentation format, there is, but there's certainly lost value if all you do is just watch the presentations and then go home and don't speak to anyone. What we wanted to do was very much almost cut out the middleman a little bit and then say, okay, let's just have those types of conversations that naturally occur around an event. So we'll have topics, but it's roundtable discussions. People will bring quite often a challenge, maybe a win, something that people can learn from, and we'll turn that into an agenda and we'll help each other out. So everyone, if you've all come with a challenge, you all hopefully walk away with a potential solution. And based on an investment of a couple of hours worth of your time, a nice breakfast, hopefully that's something that, yeah, people will appreciate. And like I say, from our perspective, it's how do we have conversations with people who, it's never right person, right time, but at some point in the future, maybe a good client and maybe someone that would employ. This has happened with people in our team that have attended events when they've been at previous companies in the past. And for us, it's also a good way of staying present. It's us listening to who is our target audience in terms of clients and what are their challenges and how should we be evolving to be able to help them. So yeah, breakfast is typically quite low investment. Certainly if you can compare that to running a dinner and a drinks event, for example. And again, like we've done some of those, and I think there's a time and a place for different formats, but for us, breakfasts have worked quite well. It keeps it quite serious in terms of the topic of conversation and quite focused.
They're pretty
In
intimate.
a good way.
Well, small audiences, again, it's not like, you're not looking to fill a room with people and give them all a croissant, right? I mean, it's a much, you say, round table, sort of everyone sort of sits there. Chatham House, kind of like people can share things more openly because, things are going to stay within the room. And even though everyone is technically a competitor insofar as they're all e-commerce businesses, the fact that they're all working probably different verticals within e-commerce, right? I mean, not everyone is going to be a fashion week. They're all going to be different things, right? So, they're all having, sometimes there'll be similar challenges that they've all got, and sometimes they're different ones, and a different set of, eyeballs looking at a particular challenge can be quite helpful. And you're just, I guess, in some respects, you're there more as the facilitator to kind of ensure that the conversation doesn't kind of get drawn away or what have you, but, you can sort of sit in the background and let the conversation run its course.
That's exactly it. And yeah, quite a lot of people have got extreme value from that. And we find people share sometimes more openly than we would expect. And we've had a few where we've had what we would consider to be direct competitors in the room and almost a bit nervous about, okay, they're going to be cagey or they're not going to talk about anything. And I think they've walked out of those sessions like it's a therapy session. It's like I was banging my head against a brick wall on this problem, and someone else, even though they're a direct competitor, has then openly shared, well, yeah, this is similar for us and this is what we're trying to do. And I've actually been surprised myself by some of those conversations where it's, like I said, people walk away much stronger individually as a result of sharing openly like that.
So Kevin, I want to end our conversation with, I've got one other question for you. Is that Resignal, you set up as a B Corp. For my benefit and for benefits of other people that may not know what that is, can you explain what a B Corp is?
I think there's probably a lot of definitions of B Corp. I'm not sure I
Give me your definition.
want to butcher it completely, but yeah, in terms of my definition, it's how do you run a sustainable business that is doing the right thing. So it's thinking about how do you, for us, work with the clients that you want to work with and feel proud of helping. How do you hire people that, again, it's looking at making sure that they're well rewarded for what they do. How do you give back along the way? So it happens we just did a project for the different kind who they hire people or sell products from people who have come from disadvantaged backgrounds, quite often out of prison, and it's set up by the former CEO Liz Warner of Comic Relief and stuff like that, where actually we can do stuff alongside our work in some cases, with our work in other cases, that feels, again, people are contributing and adding value that has a bit more purpose. It's not just we're going to try and make this brand more money. It's we're doing it for the right reasons. And I think that's really important for us. The B Corp process, I think, is quite arduous in many ways, but for good reason, that they don't let anyone in. You've got to be able to, qualify on a number of different criteria. And I think for us, that was something that we recognized that we were doing good things already. And we also recognized that maybe there's more that we could be doing, and becoming a B Corp was a nice way for us to benchmark and say, okay, how do we challenge ourselves on, say, like one of our values is in terms of being sustainable, in terms of what we're doing for our clients, in terms of how we're growing the agency ourselves. How do we take that a step further? And to be recognized as a B Corp feels like this is a continual thing. It's not just that you get accredited and then that's it. You have to reapply and continually get approved. So it's something for us to commit to and to look at ways that, again, we can, like I say, it's not just about building a business full of revenue, profit, headcount, et cetera. It's actually how do we feel pride behind what we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, all those things are important, but at the same time, it's
Of course.
got to have some sort of purpose and add value, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We're all going to kind of go off to pastures new, and eventually we're all not going to be here. And you just want to say, did I add value? Did I make a difference in terms of the lives of the people who I was able to kind of come into contact with at any point in time? Whether it's like agency colleagues that you have, whether it's your peer group, other agency owners, other people in the industry. Again, I've made some fantastic friends in the sort of the industry that has been so good to me, and I've tried to do the best I can to kind of help be good to it. Tried to help
Absolutely
on and do well and support them, and fight their corners with them when we've needed to. Because like I said, at some point in time, we're all just going to go, right, that's it. I'm done. I'm tapping out. And just at the end of the day, things will evolve. Things will continue. There'll still be an industry. It will evolve. It'll kind of change. That's the one thing I've always maintained. Change is the only inevitable thing we've got to look forward to, right? There's going to be change, right? Some of that change will be good, some will be bad, and you just have to adopt and adapt to kind of whatever the changes get thrown at you, and there'll be plenty.
Yeah, I think so. And I think if there's an element of you're doing the right thing and you're enjoying that journey, then that certainly helps in terms of what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before in other podcast episodes, but like if you're doing a job, I mean, before doing digital marketing, right, I was involved in insurance, and even though I was making really good money, I hated the job. And every day I went to work, I got dressed up in a suit and tie, drove to work, miserable at home, right? So no amount of money was going to change the misery that I was experiencing. So I took a 50% pay cut to go and work for a web design company. And, and then for me, it was the most liberating decision I'd ever made in my life. Right. And that was 25 years ago. And ever since then, I
can imagine. Yeah.
it's been a whole bunch of highs and lows. I've lost friends along the way in the industry, and made lots of friends in the industry, and hopefully continue to contribute to making the industry what it is and what it continues to become.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's great.
So, Kevin, thank you so much for being on the show today. All of Kevin's contact details and information, social profiles will be available in the show notes, which will be available after the show finishes. It only remains for me to say thanks again for being such a fantastic guest. And I look forward to seeing everyone on the next episode of Bad Decisions with Jim Banks.